is Professor Suarez, and I'm going to be teaching you on personal finance today. Uh, I'm excited to be here. This is my third class, um, third semester actually, and I look forward to some of the changes that I'm bringing to this version of the course. I just want to give you a rundown of the next 2 weeks and expose you to some of the information, some of the research I've been doing to make sure that I'm giving you the most up-to-date information. So let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit of background. I've worked 4 years at a major retail bank as a teller, and I was promoted throughout those 4 years into a sales position. I didn't really like the job, to be honest with you guys. Spent a good portion of time requesting more sales time because I was on the front line doing teller transactions, and at the same time I was talking to customers and engaging them in fintech, trying to get them to download their mobile apps or even get them to use the ATM. Like that annoying guy that always says hi to you and says, "Hey, come on, go. Why are you using the teller line? Go use the ATM." But it was really frustrating, that situation, and I decided that I wanted something better for myself, right? So the bank actually gave me an opportunity to go and do my master's online, and it paid for half of the master's. So practically they were giving me a check to go ahead and improve the quality of my life, improve the work that I was doing. So I took advantage of that. Most of the time, while I was working full time, I'd spend nights awake till like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning finishing up some of my master work, but eventually I was able to finish. At the same time, while I was working at the bank, I also ran an entrepreneurship course for students who were looking to start their own business. And this was outside of college. This is just something me and one of my partners was doing. And in doing so, I actually learned a lot about not just myself, but about entrepreneurship and really developing the skill sets necessary to run your own business and to take the risk necessary to make more money and to make more wealth and to make value for yourself and the people who you're working with. My partner to this day is still running the program, and what the program encompasses now is mostly helping the most marginalized of students really see the value in going to college and furthering their education. I don't run the company, or I don't work with him anymore, but I do stop in from time to time. But after that, I was actually invited to be a part of a board of Dominican politicians, and we would decide and discuss different topics that we wanted to be a part of our agenda for change and progress. I was also in charge of different committees, which included the Financial Committee and Internal Affairs Committee, or Human Resource Committee. Some of the things that were a part of that was the 2 reports I did about fundraising, as well as the ability of Dominicans or other minorities in the country to attain wealth, and what was really holding back our population. And what I discovered in my research was that a lot of what's holding back Dominicans and sometimes other minorities is this idea of being victimized. There's systemic racism, and the fact that a lot of us were immigrants or come from immigrant families, and that's really put a damper on our capacity to make income. All those things are what we feel hold us back from making more money and making more wealth, when the reality is there are aspects that we have complete control over, that we, instead of playing the victim and kind of playing the race card and saying, this is what's gonna be my life, and this is what I'm going to be earning for the rest of my life. When we take things into our own hands and we decide to make the effort to improve our life and improve um, our opportunities, right? Then we can start seeing that the value and the wealth starts to increase. And that's what my research was showing, that, as far as inequality within our race, there wasn't much inequality. There are opportunities for Dominicans like me to excel, and we do have a substantial amount of influence, not just politically, but economically and in education. So it's important that we take advantage of the opportunities that we have before us and start investing and putting our money into things that are going to help our people. That was one of the reports. And the other report was on how to improve the company as a whole, right? So a lot of this experience has helped me to get to the point where I'm at now. So right now I teach a couple courses, including this one. And I'm also working with the team to help fundraise for a business endowment. We're in the process of trying to capture about $1.2 million for Bergen Community College. And this is going to be used for scholarships, programs, and loans to help build Bergen business. And what I hope to bring to this course and bring to you guys is some of these skills, some of these ideas that I've developed over the years, and also some research that I'm doing now that really makes what we're learning more relevant to you guys, because everything changes in the financial industry. Everything changes with economics. So what I don't want to happen is that you guys get caught up in old information and do the wrong thing. I want to give you the most up-to-date, most current information, but I also want to challenge you guys, because the reality is, I don't have a CPA. I don't have a CFA license. I just have skills in money, financing projects, and empowering students. My educational background is an MBA with a concentration in finance, but my undergrad is economics. So that's really what I'm bringing to the table, and my understanding of how really personal finance is one aspect, discipline, and developing the skill sets with what you have and how you spend it, but also a mindset on developing wealth and creating value for yourself and others around you. With personal finance, there's two parts, right? The money coming in and the money coming out. The book refers to this as income and expense. Now, what you'll notice as we move forward in the chapters is the book highlights more expense, because it's a very disciplined process in managing your expenses. And income, right, it doesn't really talk much about it, but I like to spend a good amount of time, because I feel that students don't spend enough time understanding how to develop value, right? Because there's two ways to develop value. You develop value through income, what you earn, and you develop value through your assets, through your equity, and what you own, what you buy, what you purchase, and what you maintain. And these two features of finance are really two parts of the same coin. So it's important that you see it that way. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later. First week, we're going to be discussing just the general ideas of personal finance, right? But what I want you to start thinking in the back of your mind while you're doing the discussion boards, while you're writing the quiz, while you're responding to the other students, is what is the best case and worst case scenario, right? And I don't just mean this class. Like, sure, it's A or an F, right? But outside of class, what do you really want out of life? How do you determine if you're going to be successful? How do you even determine what you need to do and what you need to get? How are you gonna get it? What's the game plan? when do you think is an appropriate time to really sit back and evaluate, hey, I think I'm successful now, or I think I've attained what I really wanted. And finally, I want you to start thinking about how much is it going to cost you to really get these things. Because I mean, in most cases, people who attain large fortunes, it's not a matter of their resources, right? It's not that, they're poor and then with a couple of pennies in their pocket, they're able to become rich. It's really a matter of resourcefulness, where they take what they have and are able to utilize that to really get something of value or create value for the other people who may have the resources but don't have the skill sets to make it happen, right? And research has shown, primarily by Dr. Kahneman, that once you make 75,000, anything more than that doesn't make you happier, right? But every $10,000 drop below that makes you substantially worse and substantially more depressed. And the reason that is because of something known as the law of diminishing returns, which is an economics term that refers to the fact that the more of something that you have, at a certain point, that becomes less and less rewarding to you. And what they discovered is 75,000 is the breaking point. So with that regard, is that going to be your determining factor for success? Is it money? Is it autonomy? Is it a career? Something that you're doing that you feel is worthwhile and gives meaning to you? These things are important. And sometimes when you think about personal finance, you don't think that these things are tied together. But the reality is the resources you use allow you to attain and get those things. And then on top of that, I want you to think about what's the worst case scenario. Once you evaluate and realize all these aspects that you find that you have to do, what happens if you don't do that? For example, a lot of you guys are studying and getting your education because you believe that this is going to add value to your life and make you an asset to your companies, to the companies that you work for or the companies that you start. But what would happen if, God forbid, you drop out and you don't go to school? What would happen if you decide not to do your work? Besides getting enough, if your work and your future income is contingent on your performance in school, you wouldn't be able to get that job, right? If you decided for some reason to quit your job and stop working and just play video games, what would happen? You'd become a slob. If you decided to stop keeping yourself clean and stop maintaining yourself, you would look disheveled. It'd be very difficult to get a job, right? All these things, if what you're requiring of yourself to be successful is to give you 110% in everything and to learn, what is the worst case scenario if you do not learn the skills of personal finance? Go into debt, go into bankruptcy, never be able to attain that first home or that second investment home, or be able to invest on the level that you feel is appropriate and get the earnings that you feel you'd be able to get if you knew how to invest your money or how to invest your time. So the reason that these things are important is because it allows you to have two types of motivation. Positive motivation to strive for something better in the future, and negative motivation to strive away from and to motivate you to not BS yourself, because you have time and you have assets and you have resources. It might not be unlimited resources, but in order to be resourceful, you have to make the most of all that you have. Then for the next week, we're going to be focusing on how to take those aspects and develop habits, right? And there's a three-pronged approach to developing habits, which is based on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I mean, you see with some respect what is important to do, right? Because we do have the videos that are corresponding to the discussion board. And what's great about it is it's simple, but why don't more people do it? And the reality is it's a psychology. And most people don't seem to have the innate capacity to just do it for themselves, right? And what I mean is sometimes, people take better care of their dogs than they do themselves. Take, for example, if you had a puppy that was sick, you would take it to the vet, and the vet would give you a prescription, right? And you are more likely to buy the drugs and follow the routine exactly for what it is to save that puppy than you were to do it for yourself if you went to the doctor and he prescribed you something, right? And, that's human nature. Most people are like that. Why? Because we're tyrants and we don't want to listen to the boss, right? We tend to be rebellious, and even for our own selves, even if we know that that's the right thing to do, we tend to be rebellious. But what we want to start doing is disciplining ourselves with respect to finance. And we want to start building habits that help us to attain success, and not habits that destroy us and destroy the value that we create for ourselves and the people we care about. So like I said before, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People acknowledges that the habits are 3 aspects, threefold: knowledge, desire, and skill. You want to know what you know and know what you don't know, and try to attain that knowledge associated with the habit. You want to have a desire and want to do it, and you want to develop a skill set that is associated with successful habitual process where you do it every day, and you find results, and these results reinforce you to want to continue doing it. So this 3-pronged approach is also associated with the design of the class. So as I told you before, a lot of this research is based on 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's also based on 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan Peterson. It's also based on my economics background from my undergrad, but the economics and psychological studies of Dr. Kahneman, along with more research on that on that field, specific discipline, which I'll be pulling up throughout the semester. I research heavily on the subject material that I speak on, because I've come to realize that most students who are starting out don't see the value in it at first, and they don't do the research, right? And I know, because I've been in your shoes. It's very few people who actually take the source material that's at the end of every chapter and the extra additional reading, and they say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and look at this because I am interested in the subject. Very few. I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying very few, right? But once you start to realize that, okay, when I research and when I look these things up, these actually, first of all, I fact check whatever I'm getting told, because I don't know if this person is legitimate and knows what he's saying, or if he has my best interest, or some people, some financial advisors, if they have a slant or some bent to sell me something, right? Because the reality is, in most cases, you would hope that if somebody's giving you financial advice, they're acting on a fiduciary capacity, which means that they're having your best interest. To be honest with you, I'm not acting on a fiduciary capacity, because my interest is in your learning, not in how much money you make and what's best for you. So I don't give you financial advice. So it's your responsibility to take what I say and really make sure that it's 100%. So that's why I research, and that's why you should research too. But who knows? Maybe the material will interest you in some studies, or maybe all it'll do is, in fact, challenge you. But with regards to the 3-pronged approach, the book covers the knowledge piece, which I quiz you on that. right? And that makes up one portion of your grade. The desire piece is really highlighted in the discussion board because writing allows you to analyze ideas critically, and it allows you to internalize it in a way that conversation and thinking about doesn't really do, right? So you have time with the material, and I grade you on that. That's your participation grade. And then finally, the skill portion is based on how you practice what you preach and what you learn. And that's really highlighted in your final outline, which you guys will get to see that tomorrow. And the outline is really used to clarify your ideas for your final project, which shows the skill set on how you clarify how you explain your ideas, but also the skills that you're going to be applying in the future. What you learn is based on principles, right? So economic principles are based on theory, but show up so often in our environment and our reality, and also in actual theory itself, that they become principles or laws that we determine to be mostly true, right? But with most sciences, there are very few constants, and even those constants have exceptions. But with respect to this class, we're going to treat these principles as the law. So the first one that I want to talk about is the time value of money and the monetary value of time. And what this means is money now is more valuable than money later, right? But you can value your time now based on future earnings. Then what I mean by this is, for example, if you were to say that finishing school, you are going to be able to earn more money, so much so that the career that you put yourself in pays at $120 an hour. After you take into consideration student debt, taxes, or what have you, let's say hypothetically you're earning $100 an hour, right? You could take a portion of that and say that that money that you're earning in the future is based on the time that you're putting now. So we could even make a calculation that maybe 50% of what you earn, that $100, is based on the time that you put in to the school or to this class. Your time now is worth $50, right? So say that taking that assumption into account that the time that you're putting now is $50. What would you say or how would you feel if you were to waste maybe 5 hours in a day? That means you're wasting $250 a day, right? So let's take that a bit further. 5 hours a day. If you take that for a 5-day work week, that's 25 hours a week. That's 1,250 hours per year. That's $62,500 a year that's being wasted, just for wasting 5 hours a day. What could you do with the extra 62K a year, right? Would you be willing to say no to that? Is that what you do when you waste time? Listen, I'm not telling you that I don't spend time hanging out and chilling, and I'm not saying that, any time that you spend not making money is a waste of time. But what I am saying is, I think if you could potentially be making more in the future, taking into account the time you spend now, that is personal finance, right? Because it's not just putting money in a savings account. It's not just making the choice to invest in your 401k. It's making the decision to invest in yourself and spend the time needed to make the most out of your life. With respect to the time value of money, that's a little bit easier because it's just with respect to interest. When money is borrowed, it has to be paid back. And usually it has to be paid back with interest, which is just a complicated way of saying, if I lend you money, I want that money back, and I want a little bit on top, because the time that I had to wait to get that money back is valuable. Okay? So interest is just the cost of money with respect to time. And it implies that even money has the opportunity to be used well and used incorrectly. And not using it is wasting it. Because there's an opportunity cost, which is another word for saying there's an opportunity that's wasted if it's not put in an investment, if it's not loaned out, or if it's not put into an asset. So because both time and money are limited, we find ourselves saying that we can fail because of a lack of resources, because we don't have enough time, because we don't have enough money. We're not able to get what we want. But instead of learning victimization, and owning that, what I want you guys to do is feel empowered to make the right decisions and be resourceful. The other aspect that I want you guys to take into account is the law of diminishing returns, which we spoke about before. And that's always in play, which means that the more of something you have, the less valuable it becomes to you. Right? Because the law of diminishing returns may not apply to you, but apply to somebody else. Right? So somebody that has excess of one thing might be able to offer that excess to somebody else and create more value, right? This is kind of the idea that's behind entrepreneurship, finance, and fund and capital accumulation or capturing capital, right? Venture capitalists. Some people have excess money and they don't know what to do with it. So they rely on these venture capitalists or these investors to really find opportunities for them. And some people have excess talent that they don't know what to do with it. They need management. These are places where you find an opportunity in a problem and you're able to create value in yourself. And that's something that resourceful people do. This is just an example of taking the personal finance principles and making it your own and adding value to yourself. And lastly, there's the Pareto principle, right? Which is the 80-20 rule, where 80% of wealth is owned by the top 20%. Not only is this a feature of income, this is a feature of work, where 80% of the work is done by 20% of the top performers, right? But it even goes a step further with the price law. And this is based on a study done by Dr. Price, where he found that 50% of the work in a company is done by the square root of the company's employees. Meaning if you have 9 employees, three employees do 50% of the work, which is fine, you know, because it's 9 employees. When you get to 100, 10 employees do half of the work. When you get to 10,000, 100 employees do half of the work. Because systematically what happens is disorganization and unproductiveness grows exponentially, but productive people and productive work grows linearly. So it's the people who are most successful and the people who find the most value are very small and very, very few, right? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So really having the discipline, having the capacity, and having the drive to really be the top performers requires a great amount of sacrifice that very few people pursue and very few people are capable of. And sometimes, because of the different aspects that are going on around the world and in politics and in policies and with respect to environment, there are things that are beyond your control. Yes. Is everybody going to be a millionaire that takes this class? Of course not. Is anybody going to be a millionaire that watches this video? Probably not. But the best way to increase your chances is to follow the procedures to the T, to push yourself to the limit, to go beyond what you feel is the bare minimum, right? And see what happens. That's the minimum that you can do. But in most cases, the people who are most successful, who get the most out of life, who get the most value, have to push beyond that. And it doesn't mean 40-hour work weeks. It means 80-hour work weeks. It means pushing beyond what it is that everybody else is doing. And setting yourself up for success. But it's going to take work. And I don't want anybody to think that, oh, if I just hand in the discussion boards and pass my quizzes, I'm going to get an A in this class, right? It's not about the A. It's about finding success. And if you get the A, but don't learn a damn thing, you're only failing yourself. We have a choice we got to make, guys. Limited resources means you have a limited amount of choices with time, with money, and developing your capacity. So we have to decide now that we're going to give it our all. If I'm going to be researching, recording these videos, responding to your assignments, I want to make sure that you guys are also giving 100% as well. Because if you're not going to do that, it's going to be a disservice and you're not going to get the most out of this class. And if I have to make a case for that, let me go ahead and talk about the money you make as a function of time, right? So let's take, for example, this line over here, right? And as you notice here, it's a graph showing that that you get more money as time moves forward, right? In most cases, let's say you start working over here at this point, you'll find that it's actually less of a line and more like periods of making a lot of money one point, making no money another point, maybe unemployed, making some more money at that point but not as much as you used to. It's up and down, right? But to keep it simple, we're gonna keep it as a line, right? And if you notice here, the formula that you see here is the amount of money you make is a function of wages and time, right? So if I were to do a type of equation for this line, I could say that the money I make is equal to how much I make per hour times the amount of time I take to make that, right? And I mean, this is with respect to time indefinitely, right? And then my wealth or my income is actually the area underneath it. So as you can see, over time, what tends to happen is you make more and more money, right? And a lot of people assume this is a natural phenomenon, right? That, you know, over time you're just going to make more and more money, so you just have to work for the rest of your life, and eventually you'll get a break, and maybe, who knows, you'll make some money, right? And a lot of our parents, a lot of our grandparents had this idea about money and time and earning income, right? But the idea that you can influence your wages by some facet of human capital, right? That changes things, right? So if you have, so this is a line, this yellow line here is in fact the same line, but the wages are bigger, right? Versus this orange line that we just looked at where the wages are smaller, right? And if you notice here, this is a certain amount of money that we can make, right? But look, to make it at the same point here, it's a different amount of time. If we have a lower wage per hour, it's going to take us longer to make the same amount as somebody who has a higher wage. And if this is hard to conceptualize, right? Somebody making, for example, if we say somebody making $5 an hour is going to have to work twice as hard as somebody earning $10 an hour. But what are the features of wage, right? So we have to look at the way that we earn money differently than this. So this is the same function as before, however, we're taking into account that our time is limited, right? And we know that our time is limited because of this equation here. Time as a function of hours. And H is not just the hours that we spend, but it's hours that we spend doing things that we want to do that isn't work, leisure time, right? And the more hours we spend doing leisure, the less money we make. So if you look down here, this function of time, right? This is our H, how much time we spend chilling with the friends and hanging out, right? And like I said before, the more time that we spend, the less money we make. So because we've gone ahead and taken all this time here, we end up at this point here, which is less than the total amount that we can make. Now, if we want to think about this mathematically, we have to look at this function here, which is just saying that money is a function of wage and time. And we know time is a function of 24 hours because there's 24 hours in a day. So let me go ahead and write that out here. M is equal to, let's say wages are at $5, right? Because that's an easy way to do that. $5. And remember we had that it was 5t, whatever time we take. But we could actually substitute that for the function that we have over here for time, which is 24 minus h, right? So this value here is what is the potential amount of money we can make. But nobody's going to work 24 hours, right? H is the amount that we are giving up. And this H is not only associated with us hanging out with our friends and chilling, it's also associated with the time that we spend to go to school, to develop a new skill, or to be trained in something that could potentially impact this number right here, the wages, right? The other thing that impacts money is endowments. And the way that endowments is considered in economics, it's assets or investments that are handed down. And what I don't want you guys to get confused about is that, oh, because I own a house or an investment, I get paid every day. What really tends to happen is any asset that you own, you would hope appreciates in value, but it can depreciate, right? But for this example, we're going to assume that it appreciates, which means that it gains in value over time. So when you actually do sell, you get more money than what you paid for it. And this is profit or dividends or earnings for what you have invested, right? And there are some stocks and bonds and assets that do pay out dividends per day, but this increases your earnings. So if you compare it to the last slide, you saw that the whole green line was shifted up based on these investments without having to add any more hours or any more work. Something to think about. So if you take into account the same thing that we were talking about in the beginning, wage is actually a function of capacity. It's a function of how much training you did taken out of leisure, right? So with respect to this one here, there's two lines, right? There's the first line that we had, and then the second line here. And this is the guy that's earning $10 an hour. As you can see, they're earning substantially more at this point than the person who's earning 5. And if you go here, this person has more time to earn the same amount as the other guy who's making 5. Because look where his H is. His H is right here, right? So he has more time to do the things that he wants because he's making more money, right? And I know this probably seems like super logical and super straightforward, like why even go over these things? But it's important to think about this. Our time is so limited that to waste it is the equivalent of taking the money that you have and throwing it in the garbage. Because we may have so much potential money that we could be earning and creating for ourselves in the future. But if we don't develop the skill sets necessary, it's a waste. It's a waste. So this is called a utility function, right? And this shows wage potential, right? How much we could potentially be earning with respect to time and training, right? And as it moves, if you notice, this is actually curved, right? So what this is telling us is that at some point, the training and experience we have becomes exceptionally valuable. Maybe not to just one company, but to multiple companies, to the point that it creates a massive amount of value for us, right? The assumption is that it curves up this way. But it may be the law of diminishing returns. There may be some point, and I think it's more like this one, that at a certain point, your time and experience actually diminishes your value. You become too trained or too oriented in one specific thing that if something changes, you start to lose value, or companies start to lose value in yourself. So really, where you want to find yourself is at this point, is going up and getting to a point over here, right? And what this is really saying is you want to build your time and your learning not to its maximum point or to some distant future where you're just so focused and so oriented in one thing. You really want to get to a point where you optimize the amount of time you're spending on your learning and your experience, but also optimizing your wage potential, how much you could be making. But the reality is that by spending time and learning, you are increasing your wage potential. by spending time in college, you're more likely to earn more money. You're more likely to find a job that pays out a substantial amount. At the same time, college is not the only place that you could develop learning. There are trade schools that actually, there are careers that out of trade schools that pay $50,000 as soon as you graduate. But that's really up to you and what you want to accomplish and what you want to develop in your life. The next piece I want to highlight is the opportunity cost. As I said before, everything under the line is what you actually earn, right? This area here is what you actually earn. And we have the two examples of the person who makes $5 a day versus the person who makes $10 a day. But what does a person give up? Let's say, for example, these two people give up this H in order to go to college, right? The person who makes $5 an hour only gives up this chunk here, this little triangle here of income, right? That they could potentially be making. But this person gives up this much, which is a larger triangle than the person who's making only $5, right? And why is that? Well, the main reason is because of wage, right? So if somebody gives up 2 hours and they make $5 an hour, they're only giving up $10. But the same person gives up 2 hours and they make $10 an hour, they're giving up $20, double that. So they're giving up double the money. So it doesn't make sense sometimes when people who already earn a substantial amount give up that time to go and pursue a career or go and pursue something else in college. And it doesn't make sense because the opportunity cost is substantial, right? But that also, you have to remember that the value is not just associated with money. Sometimes the value associated with education is what could potentially come out of it, the opportunities, and really something else altogether. Because I mean, when we're young, we just want to make money, move out, become independent. But there's more to life. There's more meaning than just having a career and just going to work every day. Sacrifice is really what yields returns in the future. And what that means is what really adds value to a person's life, person's life, is responsibility and giving something back, not just spending money. There has to be some aspect of also giving back to the community and donating. And what I find for myself anyways is that I find a real value in giving back to the student. Take, for example, we just developed a scholarship for students who can't afford full-time school, and we go ahead and pay for their first class so that way they can be full-time. And this is the first year we're doing it, but it's addictive, man. I got the first student, I saw the smile on her face. She's happy that she's going to be full-time now, and I just want to keep donating. I want to keep giving more and setting up more programs, because once you do something that's bigger than yourself, investing in the education of the future, it really takes on a whole different life. And you add more value when you give, not when you're just receiving and taking in. Some of the emptiest lives are of people who just focus so much on earning and getting and taking and don't ever give back. Listen, guys, I want you to be able to earn a lot of money, but I want you to do that so that way you guys could give it back to the things that you really value and you feel matter in life. But if you don't have that innately understood, you don't develop that skill, and then you find that there's emptiness in everything that you've earned. So some references if you want to check some of the resources that I drew upon that I felt reflect what I've learned in my undergrad, and also what my research is what aligns with a lot of my research now. These are all good sources to look up and follow up with what I feel really addresses personal finance as a whole. The two books on the bottom actually talk about the aspect of personal development, which really isn't highlighted much in this course, but you'll get silver linings and streaks of that in some of our talks. And again, my name is Professor Augusto Suarez. If you have any questions, comments, or concern, my email and text is on the class website. It's been a pleasure, guys. I think it's midnight now, and I just wanted to make sure I got this to you guys before the end of the week. Do expect to see a video next week talking about the final project, and also some of the different saving techniques that I want you guys to start considering, and why it's important for your personal development and personal finance. Again, this is Professor Suarez signing off. Take care, guys.